episode with the fire guest right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm here with my boy Rohan. We're welcomed by a very special guest, former 49er, Adrian Colbert, fan favorite, my man, Adrian Colbert. How is it going, brother?
What's good, fellas? What's good? All is well, my man. Appreciate you guys for having me on the show. Shout out to the faithful always. You know that.
And then
Um,
you're a father now, right, brother?
I,
Recently, right?
I am, yes, sir. Five-month-year-old on Christmas.
Hey,
Congratulations, brother.
best Christmas gift you can get.
No,
5 months on
absolutely.
Christmas.
Yeah, 5 months on Christmas, man. I got to surprise my family, my son, out in Texas for like 12 hours. But any time is better than no time.
Absolutely. So that's right there. That's a very great man right there. We're going to talk 49er football. First and foremost, you played along that defense. You know what that defense is capable of. Is this the best defense you've seen since the 2000 Ravens, or what? Where would you compare this defense to right now for the 49ers?
I'm not like a big fan of like comparisons, but this defense is very special. I mean, they have it. They have a solid foundation from the D line to the linebacker core and the safeties and the corners. I mean, it's great. They got great players everywhere. Like they're not lacking in any position any position group, and that's special. It's great. They got great players everywhere.
And now talking kind of about about that safety group, right? You were a former safety yourself. One of the best players on the team, Talanoa Hufanga, emerged this year. What have you seen from him in his development in his second year?
I mean, his run game is crazy. Like the way he attacks the run, the way he hits the gaps. His run reading is awesome. The way he breaks out of the post. I mean, he's just an all around safety, and he tackles really well. I that's what you want out of your second year safety, for real, to be honest.
So there's a big debate conversation about defensive player of the year. People are talking Michael Parsons. Uh, Obviously, the great Nick Bosa's in that conversation, who probably arguably should win that award, right? Who do you have winning that award right now? Is it Nick Bosa, someone else, someone a wild card name that we haven't mentioned? Who do you have winning that defensive player of the year?
No, it's definitely Nick, man. Nick Bosa has been a dominant force from the start, and he not even done yet. That's the crazy thing. He still got 2 more games to play.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost at the Alden Smith 49er sack record of 19 and a half. But going away from Bosa, one of the more necessarily underrated players because he was snubbed from the Pro Bowl, but a guy who's flashed significantly this year, linebacker Dre Greenlaw. He's a guy who's played next to Fred Warner. What have you kind of thought of that tandem? And also the comparison. I know you don't like him, but the comparison to the Bowman Willis era back in the early 2010s.
I mean, if there's a linebacking core that is similar, it's definitely those two guys. And I mean, Fred and D'Amico and all those guys, they've done a great job of kind of like grooming that room and bringing guys with them. Like not just Fred, not just being great himself, but also bringing the guys around him uh, up to the standard. And they've all rose to the occasion, and they've all gotten better and developed in a way that now they put their names in those groups of some of the best linebackers in the league.
So I know you've been around the 49ers culture, you've been around that locker room and everything. All the fans always talk about the culture. Give us what the culture really is, because what I've seen is kind of more like a college brotherhood, right? Or am I wrong? Like talk to us about the culture, and if you could like explain to the fans what it really is like in that locker room.
I wouldn't say like a college brotherhood. I would say like a actual family brotherhood. Like when you go in that
Okay.
locker room, like it's family. Like I mean, I'm not sure how college brotherhoods work because I'm not in a fraternity, but like the when you go in that locker room, like it's all love. Like there's no drama, there's no beef. Everybody is there enjoying that building. Like honestly, because I mean, everybody from the janitors to the GMs, like everybody's a good presence to be around, and there's not really a lot of facade going on in the locker room. I mean, there might be some facade going on in the office and stuff like in the offices and stuff like that, but like for the most part, the players stay away from all of that, and it's player led. That team is player led, and that's the most important thing about it.
Adrian, you were there at the beginning of the Shanahan Lynch era. You were there in 17 and 18 when they were building this up. Kind of what was the culture going in from the beginning from them two? And was there anything that kind of swept you away from Kyle Shanahan as your head coach?
I mean, the culture was basically them giving the players the keys. Like Kyle said, this is going to be y'all's team. Like this is y'all have the ability to structure this culture and establish the foundation of this place how y'all want it to be. And that's why it feels like a brotherhood when you go into that building, when you get signed to that team. Like I've met players, I've talked to players that have spent some time with the 49ers since I've left, and they've also left and they just love it. Like they have nothing but good to speak about it, which is not a surprise to me because of the foundation and the culture that had got started back in 17, 18, 19, like all of that.
So I know you're good friends, obviously, with Uncle Sherm, and he's on that broadcast now. Is that something? Because I know you're a really good talker. You're really good with football. Is that something you've thought about getting into more? Because I know you stream game wise, right? You do Twitch and everything like that. Is that
Yeah.
something you want to start doing a little bit more, like gaming or like football broadcasting stuff, kind of style?
Not at this moment. Like my focus is a little bit in a bunch of different other places, like more video games and golf golf related. But I mean, I'm always down to hop on somebody's podcast and talk talk shop, because I mean, I play. I mean, I've been around players, and I mean, I watch the game, I study the game still, and I do have some insight, and I do like talking about it sometimes. But like to make it a profession, nah, I don't think so. Not right now. Maybe one day.
Good to know. Good to know. Kind of flipping it to the offensive side, we've got to talk about the rookie sensation, Brock Purdy, the guy who's kind of patrolled the 49ers through this 8-game win streak after Jimmy Garoppolo got injured. What's kind of your initial takeaway from him and how he's processing the game, having played at the NFL level?
I mean, I think I read I'm not sure his age, but I think he's older than Trey Lance, and he's had more experience. I mean, around some players, like and around the game, and that helps. Like when you've had experience. I might have been 23 or 24 my rookie year. Um, being I did a graduate transfer year after redshirting my freshman year. So like I was in college for like 6 years, 5 years. So I mean that gave me more time to develop, and like him when he got called to the plate, he was ready to play. Like and I was the same way because I mean you're in that building and you're around a lot of great players. You're around Jimmy G, you're around Trey Lance. You have like one of the best offensive minded coaches in the world with Kyle Shanahan. So like for him not to be ready and for John and Kyle and everybody to trust him to go into the game and not to bring somebody else in is a testament to his ability to play and his ability to learn.
So I know you mentioned Trey Lance, and that's a big conversation for debate for the 49ers fan base and whatnot. As a defensive player, does it matter what quarterback is behind center? Because a lot of times, like I see fans, oh, that helps defense out. This quarterback would be better to win. Blah blah blah. As a defensive player, does it help if a certain quarterback is under center or not?
No, not at all. I mean, as long as the quarterback can do the job, can hand the ball off, make the plays, make the right reads, make the right checks, and do everything that the head coach is asking of him, then I mean, it's our job to go out there and do what we got to do. On the other side of the ball, we can't focus on what the offense is doing or what special teams is doing. Like we have to go out there and focus on the things that we can control, which is handling business on defense.
Adrian, you spent a couple of years in different places. Obviously, you're two in San Francisco, went to Miami, went to New York with the Giants. What's kind of the difference in the offseason regimen? There was a lot of a lot of talk around the offseason regimen of Kyle Shanahan. Did you know any difference between the other locations and when you were with the 49ers in what you did in the offseason?
I'm trying to think. When did I? The last OTA. So the only OTAs I've done were the Niners and the Patriots. So I haven't been in any other OTAs other than those. And I mean, it was kind of the same. Honestly, we go, we'd lift, we'd run, and shit. We do some plays, some like basic plays. We wouldn't go through the whole playbook, but we would get down the fundamentals. And I mean, that was it. And we done for the day. So I mean, it's pretty much the same in a lot of places, to be honest.
So, Adrian, so there's this big, like, NFC right now is very strong in terms of a lot of the teams are kind of close. When you look at the NFC, which teams do you think pose the biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC? Obviously, you have the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts just got injured. Lane Johnson is banged up. And then you got the Minnesota Vikings, who some think are frauds, right? Like they think like, okay, like their record shows a better team, but realistically, your record is who you are, right? Like that's like realistically, that's what it is. And fans are kind of saying, well, their point differential, well, they're winning close games. That means they're a good team. They could win close games. And then you got the 49ers, you got Tampa, and then which team poses the biggest threat to the 49ers?
Like which team? Personally, I think the only team, like me personally, like the only team I think they'll face a problem with is the Chiefs.
So
Oh,
you
okay.
saying so you're saying so you're sort of saying like a rematch.
I'm saying a rematch, not sort of. I'm saying a rematch.
Okay, I wanted to say sort of because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah,
you
no.
guys got it here first. Adrian Colbert is saying we are going to get a rematch of the Super Bowl between the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think the 49ers would come back and get their revenge that they've been seeking?
I hope so. I mean, like I said, I haven't really watched much film on the Niners or anybody else, but or any of those teams. But like, I think it would be good. I would like for them to come out with the dub.
Hey, that would be fun. That would definitely be a nice situation for them to go back, rematch the storyline with Purdy and Mahomes. But going real back to the NFL, I see a comment in the chat that I like. Can you kind of take us through how an NFL offseason works as a player, the OTAs, being on the practice squad, if you are, and all that kind of stuff, how it kind of works from the 90-man to the 53-man cut down from your perspective?
Whew, that's a process. So OTAs, you're not on the practice squad. They just have, I want to say like
90.
90 players on the team. It's 90 players up until like the second week of training camp. Yeah, and then they cut it down. I'm not sure the number they cut it down to. They do like two or three different cut downs until like the
Right.
final cut. But yeah, OTAs, I mean, it's really OTAs isn't mandatory. A lot of people go, some people don't. Some people get paid extra to go, some people don't. But it's really just like a developmental process, like where you get time to bring in young guys, bring in guys that are new free agents, and help them learn the system, help them learn like the culture or like how y'all work and how y'all train. And then you got the mini camps where you go in, where the players come in, and you basically do like literally a mini camp. Like you go in like half the day and meet, you go practice, you do walkthroughs, and you go home at like 5 o'clock. And then you come back and do the same thing for 2 more days, and then you done. And then you got the summer off. And when you get the summer off, I mean, we're off from once the season ends until OTAs officially starts. And really through that time, people are vacationing, spending time with their family. And then during the summer, people are doing the same thing: vacation, spending time with their family, training, doing the little things or a lot of things, depending on what player or who you are. And then training camp comes around, and then you lock down. Lock down. You're in the building from, depending on where you are. Like where I've been, it's been like 7 to 6. 7 to 5:30, and you're meeting, you're doing walkthroughs, you're going to practice once a day, doing treatment, but you're never leaving the building. You're in the building for 12 hours, 12 plus hours a day. You're in training camp, and then you got your preseason games. It's a lot. It's a
So,
lot.
Adrian, so I know you say it's a lot, and I'm very big. Like when the opportunity is there to talk mental health, right? Because obviously, a lot of fans don't understand the what goes through a complete off season, right? What goes through being in the building for 12 hours a day, and the toll it could take on someone's mental health. Talk to me about how you were able to handle that and able to like do stuff and be able to not go into a dark place, because obviously when you're away from your family, you're in a building for 12 hours a day, you're grinding your tail off to get the goal that you set for yourself. Talk to me about the mental process for you in order to not go into a dark place.
For me personally, it took, I think, after the 2018 season for me to like really tap into like working on myself and talking to a therapist and getting the help that I needed to kind of maneuver through all of this stuff, this lifestyle. It's a hard lifestyle. I mean, you not only you have to worry about the physical damage, but also the mental, because when a player gets hurt, like players don't want to get hurt. Like people think like, oh, this he's hurt, he's injury prone, blah 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 blah. He's always hurt. Like you can't really determine that. Like there's some things you just cannot prevent. And then in this game, and like you get hurt physically, it also hurts you mentally, because there's a lot of things that you can't control that you want to control. Like you want to control being able to practice, you want to control to be able to play in the game, but you can't. And people internalize that, and it leads to, and the more you internalize, you keep on internalizing things like that, and it leads to depression. Like you start to that shit starts to weigh on you after you internalize so much, whether that be out external forces, internal forces, like all of that. Like when you internalize all that stuff and you're not talking to somebody about it, or you're not meditating, or you're not like talking to your family, or just doing the right things, as far as journaling and just getting the things out and not keeping it inside you, it'll come out eventually, and it'll come out in a negative way. And most times it leads to depression, and in depression it goes to alcoholism, drug abuse, and etc. And then sometimes people, they go that way, and it's bad. And a lot of people don't understand that a lot of players deal with that. Like a lot of players don't have like the strength or the encouragement behind them to like talk to somebody, or like if you're really feeling hurt, like just taking a break, like, because taking a break is not that hard to do, but it is hard to do, because your compensation is required. I mean, your compensation is relying on you being able to perform.
And I want
And
to say they shout out to you, man, for going in depth to explaining that. In I want everyone to understand what Adrian's saying is, don't be afraid to talk to someone. The opportunity is there, and I see a lot of times, and I'm seeing a little bit more. Professional athletes are starting to do it. They're starting to be more outspoken about it. So that's why I wanted to ask you that question. That was a very important one I wanted to ask you today, because mental health is one of those ones that I see a lot of times we're afraid of society, especially as men, to talk about.
yeah,
And I'm glad you answered that question and went in depth of talking about how you had to see a counselor at one point. I
no,
have as
every
well,
day,
and I thank you for
every
that.
week. No, every week. No, man, it's an ongoing process, man. It's being able to tap into yourself, self accountability, self growth. That's forever. Like you can't just learn that. You can't just fix that in one session, two sessions, like, because we're constantly experiencing things in life. Yeah, we can learn like techniques and things that we can do to kind of help and guide us in a way and help us relieve that stress and break it all off, but we always need somebody to talk to. And I think that's super important, for everybody. And I mean, even for fans, like fans should learn to have more empathy, because like players You think player want to play? You think a player wants to play bad? You think a player is not upset that they just got scored on or missed a tackle or didn't make a throw, but you're in their DMs talking shit and like disrespecting them? Like it's crazy to me because like if the shoe was on the other foot, or if a player came to you while you were at work and oh, you fucked that up, oh, you piece of shit, blah 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 blah, your family sucks and all that shit, like how would you feel?
Absolutely, and that's the thing that I've noticed a lot more. Like these fans, like I feel like they're that social media platform gives people like the wrong opportunity to speak, and I've noticed it's gotten a lot worse. I've seen death threats to players. I've seen like stuff that shouldn't be said to play
At
like to
all,
humans,
bro.
man. Like come on, like it's getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's crazy, but like I mean it's to each his own, bro. Like I love people. I spread love, and that's all I'm about. But once you cross that line, like I got to step on you.
Facts.
Yeah. Talking about that mental health, how do you kind of balance it between off seasons, remaining kind of in shape for the NFL season, but also spending the requisite time with your family, getting yourself straight, and all that during that big time break?
It's a daily thing, man. Like I meditate every day. I talk to my son. Like I try to have gratitude with everything. Like not only the good times, but the bad times as well. Because like we grow most in our hardest times. Like those are the when you're in your hardest moments of life. Like there's going to be growth on the outcome. Like if you have that right perspective. So during the off season, I spend a lot of time with my family. Uh, Now that I have a son, like I'm really gonna be spending a lot of time with my family. And yeah, man, like I said, I meditate, I go on walks, ride the bike. I try to hold off like the training tip until like March, April, like till I really get into it. But like I'm doing like we do light stuff. Like a lot of players don't really overexert themselves the first few months after the season because I mean it weighs on you. And obviously you play we got what's 18 games now, 17 games? I'm not even sure what it
17.
is. It's 17 games now. So I mean that's an extra game longer and then you might as well just wait a little bit. Wait a little bit, let your body rest up from that long season, that long training camp and get your mind right because the more you rest your body the more your mind is gonna kind of calm down as well.
So I got a question for you in terms of younger athletes, right? We got high school athletes, college athletes. What is the best advice you could give a high school athlete trying to get to the college level and a college athlete who has to focus on the academics, which is very hard at the college level, as well as the extreme work they have to put into the game to get to the next level?
I mean, effort, man. You gotta focus on the controllables, man. Sala, Robert Sala left me with a very important key back when I was in San Fran, and that was ace the controllables, man. Attitude, concentration, and effort. Those are things that you can control in every day in life. And obviously take breaks, man. Like if you're not feeling okay, like let somebody know. And also hold yourself accountable. Like don't wait for somebody else to tell you you're fucking up. Or don't wait for somebody else to tell you you need to do a little bit better. Like look yourself in the mirror, be able to look yourself in the mirror and like truly be honest with yourself. Like I think as people like we forget that. Like we wait for somebody to tell us like, oh, well, you should have did this instead of like you looking in the mirror and not blaming somebody else and saying like, oh, I should have did that. Like for the longest time, I used to deal with that as a kid. Like even when I was in college, like at UT, like I always blame the coaches. I'm like, oh, I'm not playing like because the coaches and all of this. But to be honest, I didn't even know how to read a fucking defense until I didn't even understand defense until my junior year of college like because I wasn't putting the effort in, and it backfired. Coaches didn't trust me, so I had to transfer. And then, I mean, after that, I mean, I'm where I'm at. but but I mean, it took a lot. It took a lot of like self accountability for me to like actually accept that like I wasn't who I needed to be, and I wasn't holding myself accountable.
Good to know.
I think accountability, and then obviously just working hard, man, doing your thing, making sure you know, like making sure you're on top of your shit, like training, weight training, obviously running, and then studying. Like that's the most important thing. Like, and then that'll give you an opportunity, and then acing the controllables.
Yeah. Talk kind of about the toughness of the NFL. A common process, but a tough one is being cut. Can you kind of just take the fans through what that process is like? And as a follow up as well, for teams that want to bring you back to the practice squad, is there any conversation while you're in that process to kind of come back to the practice squad, or is that a completely different conversation when that comes?
Um, no, it's usually around around that same time. Like they call you in, they call you up, and hey, such and such, we need you to bring your iPad in. We're gonna let you go. Go in, you go and meet with the GM and the head coach. Usually they both in the same room, and they tell you like, hey, such and such. Well, it might be a numbers thing, or it might be you just not performing well. And if it's a numbers thing, they're like, hey, we want to bring you back. If no one calls or whatever, if no one picks you up if no one claims you on waivers, want to bring you back, have you on the practice squad, such and such. And if not, then they'll let you know, like, hey, we're not going to bring you back. Good luck. Thanks for the iPad. Thanks for your time. We appreciate you. Yeah, but that's usually how it goes, to be honest.
So I'm going to ask this question, and it goes back to because I know you played for the Miami Dolphins, but not necessarily the question is not about the Dolphins. But Tua Tagovailoa has had 3 concussions in the past 2.5 months, 3 months, or whatnot. What is something that the NFL could do better, or I shouldn't say the NFL, but in general, like athletes taking care of their own bodies, or other humans taking care of each other's bodies in order to help each other with the concussions, the wear and tear on your guys' body, like the NFL Player Association trying to take away turfs. What do you think could happen that needs to be done to help you guys out?
Again, it goes back to that self accountability, man. Like at the end of the day, like you know how your body feels better than anybody. Like no, no doctor, no medical staff, no trainer can tell you how your body is. So like when you have a concussion, when you're not feeling okay. So it's up to us as players to say that. Like be real. Like don't try to be a people pleaser. Don't try to be a team pleaser. Like this is your life. Like
And it goes,
you only have one life to live. This is a game. Like you can't be worried about what the fans think. Oh, well, if he doesn't play, we're not gonna make it to the playoffs. Fuck that. Like, bro, if you don't play, or if you go out there and play and you get hurt again, like what about your family? What about the people that care about you most? Not about the people that care about you just because you can throw a ball. Because at the end of the day, you're gonna play football for 10, 12 years. God, I mean, God willing, you can play 20 years. Like you still got 20, 40 years, 50 years left to live after that. Like you have to consider that. Like we're talking long term damages that you do with concussions. So it's not something to play with, and that's not something that I'm like I play with, because I had 2 concussions last year and I sat out for 6 weeks because I was having residual headaches from it. And like I don't play about that. Like that shit was scary to me. Like I'm going on visits. I went to visits to Denver. I went to visits to Houston. I went to visits with Indy. I went to visits with I went to like 5 different visits last year, and told every team like, hey, I'm having headaches from these concussions that I was having. And that's it. I'm very transparent. Like y'all decide what y'all want to do after that. But like I'm letting y'all know, like I've had residual headaches, and yeah, and until I stopped having headaches, I stopped telling people that.
so for me, like, because I've been in the point where like even me as an athlete back in the day, when you get a concussion, like you're such a competitor and everything, you still want to play. Like, do you have has there ever been like moments, you don't have to drop names or anything, but moments where you've seen teammates push another teammate to play injured, or like coaching staff
No,
or anything?
no, No, not player, not never players. Like this game, like this NFL shit, like bro, players like we are for each other. Like we are never encouraging players to go play hurt at any kind. Like whether it's a concussion, whether it's a strain, whether it's an ankle, whatever, nothing. Like if you can't go out there and perform at your best, don't go play. Don't put yourself out there to go out there and add bad stuff to your resume because at the end of the day, your tape is your resume. And if you got a bad resume, then nobody gonna sign you, regardless of how many plays you done made or whatever.
And then we'll do one more question.
Adrian,
We'll do one more question, and then we'll go ahead and let Adrian get out of here. I do know he's on a time crunch, but thank you for being on again.
yeah, no, definitely
So,
appreciate it. But one last question, NFL career related. Just 3 weeks ago, you were in a game. You played for Chicago. You played 10 special team snaps. Are you still fielding calls from teams that want, maybe not necessarily this year, but are you still considering fielding calls from teams that want you to come in for visits, want you to maybe come to the practice squad or be activated for a game or so? Is that kind of still a part of your plan going forward?
I'm still in Chicago. I'm on the practice squad right now, but
Got it.
next year I think I'll try to come back, and I mean if not, it's all good.
I mean, whatever team does sign you, they're getting not only a great player, they're getting a great father, a great person, and that's the most important thing. I think not even throwing the sports side of everything out from football out. Man, Adrian's a great father. He's a great family man, and that's the most important thing to me. All right, a lot of times that gets carried away, and I'm very big on making sure everyone knows Adrian Colbert, great father, great family man. Like that's important to
Appreciate
me. You know what I
I
mean? Like
appreciate that.
because every we talk about Adrian Colbert, the football player. Nah, Adrian Colbert, the human, the man he is, right? Like that's to me what's more important than anything. Like you being in life is important. But I wanted to say thank you a lot, AC, for jumping on with us today to talk a little bit of 49ers and a lot of other stuff that we threw in there with you. It was a pleasure having you on. You're always welcome to jump on and talk ball with us at any moment.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate y'all having me on the show. Hey, again, always shout out to the faithful. I appreciate you guys for all the support, all the love. And man, I enjoyed the show. I appreciate y'all again for having me. And I definitely pull up again.
And then question, not necessarily a question, but I know a lot of fans they like Twitch and everything. Where can they find your Twitch, your social media platforms, anything you have going? If you have a website, anything, where can they find you at?
You could tap in on the links underscore on Twitter. Not on Twitter, on Twitter and Instagram, to be honest. And then I haven't been streaming on Twitch, but my Twitch is my first and last name. And Instagram, Twitter, I'm there. I've tap in with everybody. Shout out, like again, shout out to the faithful, man. Shout out to Rohan and Marco for having me on. Much love.
I
Hey,
appreciate you,
appreciate it.
AC. Thank you for coming on. Hope you have a great rest of your holiday season and stay safe, man.
Absolutely, man. Happy New Year's to you guys.
Likewise.
You too.
Peace.
For those of you guys that just saw in the chat, I dropped his Twitter link in the Twitter description for Adrian. There is his Twitch for those of you guys that are interested. But hey, great insight there from a great 49er legend, really, the last few years. Fan favorite.
Yeah, man, that he's been so cool to the fan base. It's very cool to see players give back to the fan base, give back to the community, especially in the sense of when he became the starting safety for the 49ers, when injuries happened, dude, he was playing some ball, bro. He was legit balling out on so that's it's cool to see. I kind of want to talk a little bit about more so now that it's just you and I. If you want, let's go ahead and talk about what we just saw this past weekend, the
Let's do
49ers
it.
versus the Commanders. So we see the 49ers at first, it looks like it's going to be a very close game, right? The offense is struggling at first. What did you see from the 49ers? Is there any concerns, any question marks about what we just saw, or is it like, okay, they beat a legit team?
I think it's a matter of both. I mean, anytime you see a team struggle, you can point to several concerns. Obviously, a slow first half. It was, I believe, 7-7 at the end of the first half. And I think the biggest storyline really was the Commanders weren't letting the 49ers offense touch the football. They had 4 drives. I'm not counting the last minute drive. One of them was a one play interception drive. The Commanders just hogged the ball essentially for the first half. They doubled the 49ers in time of possession. They were able to get their opportunities, and while they weren't really converting their opportunities, they were able to really take advantage of the time of possession over there. The 49ers, though, they had some good areas, right? That their first drive, they got down to the 15-yard line for Washington, just couldn't convert on 4th and 1. Like to see him go for 4th and 1s. That's a good. I like the decision from Kyle Shanahan.
Do you
And
like the
then
play call?
no, but I like the decision. Let's just keep it at the decision. I like the decision. Kyle Shanahan and 4th down play calling, I haven't really been a fan of this year. I'll say that. The play calling has not been up to par from what you'd expect, but I like the aggressiveness. Then we got the 99-yard touchdown. That was a cool drive. Those were really the 2 significant drives. There was a punt and then the one play interception. And so the good part that I saw from the 49ers on the positive side, the adjustment. They adjusted well on both sides of the football in the second half. Yeah, the Commanders scored 13 points, but the 49ers had several turnovers that they got and also started with a fire with that 7-play, 76-yard touchdown drive to begin the half.
So I honestly, like the way the 49ers played in the first half, the defense played well. I thought defense played exceptional well. Like they played great ball. Um, I felt like so there was a quarterback comp by I want to say Eric Crocker, right? He came out and said that Brock Purdy reminds him of Taylor Heineke. In the first half, I honestly believe there's no question for it that Taylor Heineke outplayed Brock Purdy. I personally thought Taylor Heineke against the number one defense in the NFL was making throws that were like, whoa, those are some good throws. And even into the third quarter, he was making some throws like, whoa, like this quarterback is solid for what he is. And then the 49ers defense got to him, and then he gets pulled in kind of like a weird situation because I don't think it was all on him in terms of why he got benched, right? Like he got benched, and I think it wasn't his fault. But then you look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy had a solid game. He had the deep post, which it should have been to Ray McLeod. It wasn't actually intended to George Kittle. You're muted, bro.
Oh, my bad. Okay. But no, go ahead.
So it was that deep post was intended to Ray McLeod,
Right.
which was a deep ball, and then George Kittle went and stole Ray McLeod's 2-touchdown day.
Yeah.
Not cool, but all right. So then he starts making these throws. It's like, okay, that was a beautiful throw, like on the money, right? You can't miss a wide open guy like that. Even if it was Ray, that's a touchdown, unless Ray drops it, which he wouldn't. I hope. And then a nice little boot out play action to George Kittle. George Kittle does the rest, right? Like those elevate his passer ratings or whatever you want to call them and everything. But when you look at it, where I was worried for the 49ers offense is, yes, they scored 37 points, but the defense gave them the ball a few times around the 30-yard line, 20 to 30-yard line, right? And they didn't come away with touchdowns. Came away with field goals, right? And for me, that's the biggest thing because it was a closer game. It was a closer game than 37-20. For a long period of time, it was a two-possession game. And in the NFL, two-possession games are close games. They're still things could switch like this in a heartbeat. We've seen the Minnesota Vikings come back 33-0 and win a damn ball game. So in the NFL, games are closer than fans really think. Like one play changes the game. So the way I was looking at that game, was like, why is the offense struggling to score in the red zone? We were struggling to there was opportunities to score, and they settled for, I want to say, 3 field goals. And to me,
3 consecutive field goals, that is, too. They had a field goal after Washington scored their second touchdown, 21-14, field goal. Then it was a turnover, field goal.
And to me, that's where, because people have asked me, are you concerned for the 49ers in the playoffs? That's what concerns me, Rohan. Because when you look at it in the playoffs, you aren't gonna let these teams hang in there by field goals because it's hard when you see the 49ers defense in terms of a lot of people were like, oh, the 49ers gave up their defense gave up 20 points. Well, that's a win. If you have a defense that gives up 20 points against a playoff caliber, I don't consider their offense playoff caliber, but their defense is of 20 points, that's a win. Like the defense
Mhm.
can't not hold every team to 0 points. And in the playoffs, you're playing teams like the possibly the Dallas Cowboys, Tom Brady. You're not going to hold. You're not going to do what you did to Tom Brady the first time twice. I don't think you will. The Philadelphia Eagles who could score points. Like you're not going to be able to hold these teams to 7 points, 14 points. They're going to score. And if the offense isn't scoring touchdowns, that's where things are like, whoa. And it kind of looked like, I don't necessarily know if it was the way the play calling was because it was run, run. Kyle was trying to kill the clock a bit. And then Brock Purdy would come and either he dumped it off in the short of the sticks and then it was fourth down because I saw that a few times. But does that worry you? If not scoring when you have the opportunity to put the nail in the coffin?
Now, I'll admit red zone play can be inconsistent, right? In terms of how an outcome comes every week. But the 49ers have had red zone issues for a good part of the year. It's not like that those issues were fixed. It's just they were scoring outside of the red zone for some period of time, which is where their offense became more prolific and they were able to convert on opportunities. This game though, not so much, right? You had the field goals. I think they struggled significantly in the red zone. Robbie Gould kicked 3 of 3 field goals. His longest was a 35-yarder. All 3 of his field goals were in the red zone this game. And the 49ers, they were able to score 37 points. Now, I'll attribute it to a couple of things. I think the Commanders' defense is good. Like you said, I think their Commander defense is playoff level. They absolutely shut down the run, which was important because this is the first time where you've seen the 49ers kind of more rely on the passing game to try. Well, it's not that they necessarily relied on the passing game, but they had to be. It's not like the run game was flowing the entire time. And so, to me, I think that the struggles are something to monitor. But I also think that with the overarching factors, there are a couple of things where for the red zone to be an issue, I think the defense has to not be playing to the highest of levels, and Kyle Shanahan has to have a mediocre play calling game where he doesn't free up receivers so that the 49ers aren't in scoring opportunities. So I do think that the red zone can be an issue. And remember, the playoffs, it's just one game. Everything can fall apart for the 49ers in that one game. But that's the reason I don't necessarily hold the red zone issues as heavily as I may have for other reasons.
So this comment, most of Purdy's touchdowns by Swing Song. So he goes, most of Purdy's touchdowns have come on late breaking routes that are wide open. I've noticed that. I've noticed that a lot of his big chunk plays are wide open, right? Like there's it's
That's true.
not many big time throws in terms and a big time throw is a tighter window where you have to fit it in, right? So is that concerning? Because in the playoffs, you have to make big time throws to win games. There's no way around it because what they start doing is defenses start, even though what they do in the regular season, they make everything tighter. You have to beat them with your talent, with your IQ. Is that something that we should be concerned about? Because I know I have a view on it where I'm concerned. I'm concerned that he's not making those tight window throws yet, or not making those contested throws where it has to be put on the money. Because I've seen Jimmy Garoppolo do this, right? I've seen Jimmy
Mhm.
Garoppolo go a full 2019 season where he's making a few tight window throws, but so usually a lot of schemed open passes. And then you get to the playoffs and things get tight, and then he's trying to throw into a tight window, and he hasn't worked on that, and it's turned into a interception by the Vikings linebacker Eric. So like that to me is something that does concern me because in the playoffs things get tight and you have to make tight window throws. You have to make those big time throws.
Mhm.
Does that concern you?
I think so a little bit, and it's true that his big time throw percentage is less than what Jimmy Garoppolo's big time throw percentage was. Jesse Naylor pointed this out on Twitter yesterday. I forget the exact number. Purdy's big time throw percentage is lower, and Purdy's turnover worthy
Higher.
rate is higher. Now, what do I attribute this to? Purdy doesn't have as many big time throws because I think he makes a couple of better reads than Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of he is hitting the open receiver when the receiver is open, and he's making that read when the play is there. He's going for that play. That's a good idea. I'm not going to knock him for hitting open receivers because the 49ers quarterbacks have had an issue of hitting open receivers in the past. So I can't knock him off that, but the turnover worthy play rate, that's interesting. That's as high as it is. You do worry because turnovers are, if I'm being honest, luck. It's got to fall in your hand. You've got to be able to make the play. If the turnover worthy play rate is high, you can if one, two of those plays, if they go the other way, can really change the entire thing. Now, I still think Purdy makes good decisions. I think he's made a couple of good throws. I think it's the tight window throws have been there at times, but also you've got to take into account the arm strength is an issue at times. But overall, I think you have the up and the down. I'm still taking the up. I still think that he's shown enough to where you can win a playoff game with him under center. But you do wonder against top level defenses, how is that going to go? Because the 49ers haven't necessarily played a top level defense in terms of the secondary. So we'll see.
So I'm gonna give you guys the stats that Rohan was just talking about. So it goes big time throw rate, turnover worthy plays, and an average depth of target. So Brock Purdy's big time throw rate 1.6%. Turnover worthy play percent is at 3.6%. His average depth of target is at 6.7 yards. Now you look at Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Jimmy Garoppolo's big time throw rate percent 4%. His turnover worthy plays 2.6. His average depth of target is 7.3. Now the big thing that I could see the difference in is Brock Purdy is seeing reads of guys that are wide open and actually letting it rip versus
Yes.
when Jimmy would see it, he doesn't let it rip, right? Like he
Right.
doesn't just gun it, right? Like that was the big issue that fans had with Jimmy is that he sees it and he would kind of like look and he would kind of like give a twitch and then check it down instead or go to the underneath route when the wide open one was there and he was afraid to throw it versus Brock Purdy don't care. He's throwing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, there's a difference in like in those stats show something. The turnover worthy plays are there, which means the other team only reason why he doesn't have more interceptions than he should have is because a lot of them have been dropped. He's had dropped interceptions, which is hey, every quarterback has that luck. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He had 20 something interceptions dropped last year or something like that. It's some weird stat. But to me, what worries me is the big time throw percent to the turnover worthy plays could come back around and bite you in the playoffs.
Yeah, it can. The only with the big time throw rate, like you said, I think it is attributed to hitting open receivers and being able to. It's a factor of Kyle Shanahan scheming open receivers open and Purdy actually letting it rip when Shanahan has that open receiver. And so I think it's a factor of two things there. The turnover worthy play rate is I'd say the more worrisome factor of the two. And so it'll come to that's really where it'll come to game by game situation in the playoffs because players have to make plays. We've seen the 49ers be on both ends of the stick where players have made plays against them, players haven't made plays against them, and where they haven't made plays and made plays. So I think it comes to a variety of factors, and this is why you take into everything, right? The defense playing the way they are, the offense being more prolific with Christian McCaffrey at the helm. There are a lot of different things. But like I said, everything can go wrong just for one game, and that's your season.
Absolutely. And for me, it's one of those ones where if you're looking at the optimistic side, you could say, hey, they're scoring 30, almost 30 points a game with Brock Purdy. But if you're being pessimistic in terms of you're being a one of those guys where kind of, I guess, if you're being me, all right, if you're being in terms of you're actually looking at everything and you understand how the playoff gets, you could be worried a bit because it's okay to be worried going into the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. Like fans have this idea where everything is roses, and I get like that with the defense, right? Best defense I've ever seen. I'm not worried about this defense, but then
Mhm.
we play a high power offense like Patrick Mahomes, and they get beat up, right? So like you know what I mean? So like you could say both. Like this defense is legit, but when they played a high power offense, which is the best offense they played all season, they got their asses handed to them, right? Like there's no in between. They've been balling, and then they got their asses kicked. Same thing for the
And I think
offense.
that, yeah, I think this is a good segue because we're talking about this. What are your main concerns heading into the postseason?
My main concerns are the quarterback because the quarterback shows me limitations on film. Shows me, yeah, he's hitting wide open throws. That's amazing. Wide open throws aren't going to be there in the playoffs like that, unless Kyle is absolutely some super genius that could figure out how to create open throws every game. But defensively in the playoffs, we haven't seen that from Kyle in terms of how closer and how tighter the throws are because defenses are changing things up. They're forcing you to do things that your offense doesn't normally do. Um, so they're having you do that. Defensively, my concern is the health of Travarius Ward. He's had a few concussions already, or a concussion, and had a bounce back. His health. Um, also is dealing with speedy receivers. This offense, there's this defense has kind of struggled dealing with speedy receivers or legit number one receivers. Now they locked up DK or whatever. He still got his yards or whatever. But when you play a Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, right? Like these guys, like the good route runners that are speedy, they got worked. And even when you go back to Kansas City, good route runners got speed, they got worked. So for me, it's what can the defense do to eliminate big plays? Because when they're giving up big plays, big chunk plays, that's when they're struggling to get offenses off the field. Because
Mhm.
if you can't get that big play on them, you're not going to get 10 yards on this defense play after play. Like it's not going to happen. So for
Right.
me, those are my biggest concerns: is the quarterback, and the secondary in terms of getting after fast receivers or good route runners.
Interestingly enough, I have a similar list. I was thinking about an article on where the concerns are because we all know where the strengths are for this defense. And the number one concern was cornerback depth because we've seen Charvarius Ward exit a couple of games. Now, obviously, it's injury contingent, and that's pretty tough. But when defense or when Charvarius Ward has exited the game, there's a clear prerogative for opposing offenses. He exited the game this past week. What did the Commanders do? Go straight at Samuel Womack. And it's not even Samuel Womack's fault on the one play he gave up to Terry McLaurin. He played fairly good coverage. It's just McLaurin's bigger than him, and Tashawn Gibson didn't necessarily help out with even though they were in a cover two shell. And so to me, I do think that if Ward goes out for 5-6 plays, well, guess what? 5-6 plays can lead to a touchdown drive for an opposing offense that can change the directive of the game. And so that's where I am worried because I don't know how much you trust the cornerbacks opposite of Ward in the playoffs if Ward can't be there for a couple of plays. And so I think that's kind of my main thing. Another thing that I want to say, I don't know if you mentioned offensive line. Can they sustain against strong defensive lines? If we're being honest, how many strong defensive lines have we seen that the 49ers have played thus far? Kansas City Chiefs, you can make the argument for this past week. Miami Dolphins have a pretty solid defensive line. There are a couple of them that we faced, but in the defense, almost every team, at least in the NFC, the 49ers could face, have a pretty good defensive line. The New York Giants would have a good defensive line. We just saw the Commanders have a good defensive line. The Commanders held the 49ers, apart from Ray McCloud, to 3.2 yards per carry, and they sacked Brock Purdy 3 times. That's a pretty good formula. And so most teams have a pretty strong defensive line in the playoffs. And when you talk about the top heavy teams, the Eagles might have the best defensive line in the NFL apart from the 49ers, or whether you want to put them 1-2, however you want to put them, that's a good defensive line. Dallas has Micah Parsons, probably DPOY number 2, and a pretty good core pieces in Dorrance Armstrong, and DeMarcus Lawrence out there. So teams have strong defensive lines. Can this offensive line sustain? Because we don't know how much they can win at the line of scrimmage against those teams. So that'll be an interesting part. Probably my last one. It's probably going to be what you said with Brock Purdy. First-year quarterback, right? First-year quarterback in the playoffs. Not a strong track record for that. And there are limitations. Now, Purdy elevates his 49ers offense with the athleticism, the sneaky athleticism that he possesses. Definitely elevates the 49ers offense. We've said how he can hit the big time, not big time, but hit the open throws, let it rip. He can be aggressive. That's a good part for the 49ers. But there are limitations with his game. How will those hold back in the playoffs?
So AC goes, well, so shouldn't that answer your question? We held our own against a good defensive line. Actually, so what Rohan's saying is we actually didn't. All right. So if you look, like Rohan mentioned the stats in terms of the 49ers rushing, right? Rohan said it was 3.2, Rohan?
3.2, yeah.
3.2 yards per carry, which is bad. If you look at it, that's a bad rushing stat in terms of yards per carry, because if you're getting 3.2 yards per carry, that means you're not getting enough for Kyle Shanahan to go play action more, because really the run isn't really effective. When the run isn't effective, it's kind of hard to say you are running the ball well against a good defensive line, and then giving up 3 sacks against a defensive line like that, which in my opinion, I think they are a decent pass rushing team.
Yeah.
They're solid at the pass rush. Getting after the Brock Purdy 3 times is a very good thing. They also had a lot of batted passes. They also had about 3 batted passes in the air. So when you look at the 49ers, it's one of those ones where when Christian McCaffrey is averaging 3.3 yards per carry, that's a sign for concern against a good defensive line. JC then says, "But we won the game." But what we're talking about, yeah, we won the game. That's great. But what we're talking about is, where are we concerned for this team headed into the playoffs? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether the 49ers won the game and why they won. We're talking about concerns on potentially a concern that could potentially
A
detour.
concern that could, yeah, exactly, derail the 49ers for just one game. Because, I mean, if we're breaking it down, Marco brought this up earlier, 20 of the 49ers' 37 points came off of shortened drives. Their touchdown drive at the end of the game was 33 yards to go. Their field goal drives were 6 and 8 yards. And then their touchdown drive, the second one of the second half, was a 34-yard drive off of downs. They came off turnovers. And so there were shortened drives that really was the reason that those points kind of came along. Now, the 49ers executed. They scored the touchdowns over the field goals or whatever. But, there are several reasons where you can bring up a cause for concern, and that's there.
Yeah, and when you look at it, like, so there's a statistic. I have to go back and find it. So like the drive percent, like where you're starting with the ball, dictates the touchdown probability. And when you're starting with the ball at the 30-yard line, your touchdown probability like skyrockets. Like it's meaning you're only 30 yards from a touchdown. Your probability is going to be a lot higher than if you're starting with the ball at your own 20. So for me, like, that was concerning to see the offense not be able to capitalize and only score 17 points when they actually got the ball at regular field position, right? Like, to me, that was like, okay, well, that's 2 weeks in a row where I've seen the offense struggle. Yes, they're scoring points, but if you look back at the previous game, the defense has scored. They pretty much gave the ball at the 7-yard line. That's a touchdown. If you ain't scoring at the 7-yard line, you got real issues. They scored at the 7-yard line. Then back to back, 3 field goals in a row where they had the ball around the 30. That is concerning. Right? To me, that is very, very concerning. So for that to me is where I start to question things. I'm like, okay, well, is it Brock Purdy? Is it the offense? Is it Kyle Shanahan? Right? Like, what is it? I don't know, but we're gonna find out very soon in the playoffs. Whether it's Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, the offensive line, the running backs, we don't know. But only scoring 17 points out of the possession on the possessions where you weren't in amazing field position, that's what's concerning.
And let me just address this. Why am I penalizing the defense for taking the ball away? All drives are not going to be 50-plus yards. Look, I'm not penalizing anything. I'm not trying to take away anything. We are trying to come up with causes for concern that the 49ers may encounter in the playoffs. I gave you the data from the Commanders game. Yes. Were those drives 30, 35 yards? Yes. Did we also see stalled drives? Yes. And then when we bring up the Chiefs game, the 49ers lost to the offensive line there. We bring up other games. There are games where the 49ers did struggle against opposing defensive lines. The New Orleans Saints. They put up 13 points only. Remember, the playoffs is a one-game sample. When there is there's one game that could tilt the scales. If there's an issue like that prevents the 49ers from scoring maybe more than 20, 24 points in a certain game, guess what? That's a game they could potentially lose. That's all that they're bringing up. I've already said I believe that the 49ers will win at least one playoff game with Brock Purdy at the quarterback, and that the factors such as the defense, such as the weapons around the 49ers offense should propel them forward. There are some causes for concern that you do have to account for based on the data that you've been given.
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest thing is when you look at things is the defense isn't gonna give you the ball 3 possessions every game at the 30 or at the 40. You know what I mean? Like they're not gonna give you the ball at the opponent's 40 3 times in a game. It doesn't happen that often, right? Our defense takes away the ball at a high rate, but this is probably the only game, or maybe the only game where we've gotten the ball 3 times on that great of field position this season. So when you're looking at it, it was okay. Well, that's a concern because not necessarily not a concern for the defense, but for the offense, right? Because now when you're not scoring and you're getting the ball that close to the field, you're kind of putting your defense in a bad predicament. Let's say the 49ers play a team like the Philadelphia Eagles or whatever, Dallas Cowboys. Turn the ball over, they give it to them at the 30, and they're settling for field goals. Well, you're giving the other team an opportunity to stay alive. And in the playoffs, when you leave teams stay alive, we've seen miracles happen. It is what it is. We've seen miracles happen. We've seen the Minneapolis miracle. We've seen the 49ers have had the catch a few times. So we had catch 1, 2, and 3. We've had I know people remember the shootout with the New Orleans Saints where that was a kind of like a miracle in a way, So when you look at these games, you look at what we've seen, it's a concern because if you play a team that could score, you play a team like Dallas who has a good offense, play a team like Philly who has a good offense, the Minnesota Vikings, a good offense. We like to talk smack about Kirk Cousins and that team. That's a good offense. That is a really good offense. When you look at even if you look at Tampa Bay, Tom Brady is Tom Brady. Give him opportunities. You're only scoring field goals. He might figure you out, right? So for me, that's where I get concerned about. But I know it's a conversation that could go forever. We're already at an hour. We had a great episode. We had Adrian Colbert on. We talked 49ers football with him. We talked a bit of Brock Purdy, Defensive Player of the Year. We talked a little bit about what team he had a great prediction. I'm not going to tell you who he predicted to win the Super Bowl or who he predicted is going to be in the Super Bowl. We'll go back and watch that. That is a great sign for 49ers fans. A former 49er predicting a crazy Super Bowl. We talked a little bit mental health with him. That was great to hear from an NFL player's perspective. I think you and I, Rohan, we did a fabulous job today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We had a lot of people. Callie Young, Niner Gang Podcast, JC, Kenneth, going farther back. We had a lot of guys. Big June. I seen you in the podcast. I seen CJ Gray earlier in the comment section. A lot of people. Thank you guys all for tuning in today. Any comments today, Rohan, about talking to AC?
No, this was a great interview. You get a little, we got a little insight on not only the 49ers and Brock Purdy and how the defense has been playing, but also behind the life of how an NFL player, how kind of the process of the offseason goes, how his career has gone, all that. Great insight from him. Be sure to go check it out if you missed it at the beginning of the episode. And then great conversation, great comments. The chat's always popping. We appreciate all you guys in general. Thank you guys so much. Have a happy holidays to all y'all. And yeah, we'll be back soon.
Everyone, make sure you go and you subscribe to both channels, 49ers Red Zone Podcast, as well as Rohan's personal channel. That's it for today. Thank you guys all for tuning in.